Hello and welcome to 5-Year Club video number 90. Expectations. This topic has come up for me when I'm talking with several people in the last week, and so I thought it was a good time to just lay it down. I know I've mentioned this before as part of other videos, but I think it does deserve its own video, and video number 90 is as good as any. Decide what your expectations need to be based on your numbers, and then convince yourself that that's okay. We're going to talk about why that's the way we do it. Let's talk about numbers first. Talk through some examples. As I've learned more about money, I've learned how great a sum $1,000 is, and I've also learned how little 1 billion is. $1,000 is enough to live for 53 days in Cambodia. That's food, lodging, transportation, and some random Cambodian activities. What is the value of 53 days of your time? What could you build or write or produce in that time? How many books could you read? What impact would those books have on your life? For me, I look back and I can see that I've made investment mistakes and I've made spending mistakes, and I've made renting mistakes that cost me thousands of dollars. And I could have avoided them if I could go back in time and hand some books to my 22-year-old self and say, go read these, and give my 22-year-old self $1,000 so we could live in Cambodia for 53 days. It would be well worth my $1,000. And so just from that, I know I can multiply that $1,000 to be $100,000, literally. And so that time is very valuable. So my perspective on $1,000 used the right way is that $1,000 can have a big impact. There's a lot you can do with it. And along these lines, it's a good exercise. What does your 60-year-old self wish that you read right now? What are those books that you're like, oh, I should probably read that? Yeah, you probably should. Go put them by your bed. Go put them on top of your pillow so you literally can't lay down without reading them. Important thing. Now, $1 billion, that's more money, and you can certainly stay in Cambodia for longer with $1 billion. In fact, it's about 53 million days, which is about 145,000 years. Humans will probably be a different species by then. But even so, $1 billion is not enough to cure disease or hunger or end domestic violence on a worldwide scale. At least nobody with $1 billion has figured out that solution. And when you think through it, it's not that hard to tell why, because it's only about 14 cents per person on Earth. And even if we look at $1 trillion, we're still only talking about $140 per person on Earth. And $140 is enough to buy about 7 days for each person on Earth to spend in Cambodia. But, sending everyone on Earth through a 7-day Cambodian experience, it's nice, but it can't do things that need to be done to fix these big problems. It doesn't treat mental illness. It's not enough time to treat addiction and other underlying causes of violence and other underlying causes of these big hairy goals, these big hairy problems rather, that we're trying to change. But what did you expect? I think a lot of people will see the number $1 billion and it's the same as infinity. You can do anything. It's $1 billion. A billionaire. They're like Superman. They're like God. They can do anything. But they can't. And it's not surprising why we can't immediately grasp the limitations of $1 billion, because we don't deal with $1 billion on a daily basis. The numbers we deal with on a daily basis are like less than 20. You work 9 to 5, eat 3 meals a day, go to bed at 10, $3 for a coffee, split up these people into 4 teams, pay $20 for 6 gallons of gas, and that 20 is really pushing it because there's not that many times you're going to go above 20 during the day. And dealing with those numbers sets your expectation about numbers. Living in America sets your expectations for how much $1,000 is worth. Living in California, one-bedroom condo rents for $2,000 a month, so you can spend 15 days in the condo and then you starve to death because that was all your money. So we have these expectations that are based on our experience, that are based on our life. These expectations are on numbers. Let's talk about lifestyle now. Step away from the numbers. What was it like where you grew up? What were the people like? I grew up in a nice area. It was definitely middle class, but it was nice. And on a worldwide scale, probably upper class. Most places in America, upper class compared to what most people on Earth live with. But for America, my area was middle class. Family across the street bought boxed milk, like the powder milk, dehydrated milk, because they had 7 kids, and I guess there wasn't enough space in the fridge for all of that hydrated milk, or it was just too expensive. I'm not sure, but I did not live in Beverly Hills. But it was nice. We had highly rated public schools. They were all in a row. Parkview High School. This was Trickham Middle School, but it since has moved. And this is Camp Creek Elementary. Across the street, there was a big soccer complex, the Gwinnett Soccer Association. I think they had something like 12 or 17 soccer fields. So it was easy to go to these schools and then play soccer. The kids at these schools won national competitions in athletics and academics. So, it wasn't a lot of gang violence. There wasn't a lot of drug usage. It was just people playing sports and studying, and there was a lot of greenery, and, you lived in suburbia, and some of the houses in suburbia were McMansions. It's pretty easy to find a McMansion in Lilburn, Georgia, where I grew up, and certainly many others were just one-story ranch houses. It's a mix of both. And this taught me when I grew up that if I earned good money, I could live in a McMansion. If I just did okay, I could live in a one-story ranch house. In either case, I'd have a yard, because yards are cheap. And nobody lived in an apartment. Apartments are weird. Apartments, maybe if you live in New York City, which is like some alien planet, then you live in an apartment, because that's all there is there. And the only other way you'd live in an apartment is if you were like really poor. I don't know any of my friends that lived in an apartment. So this is where I grew up, and this is what I expected. And I worked hard in high school. I worked hard in college. I worked hard after. I'm still working hard today. In high school, I printed out a memorized list of 10,000 possible words that could appear on the SAT. In college, all of my summer breaks, all of my winter breaks, I was applying for money and working in these horrible basement labs with these really loud vacuum pumps and terrible chemicals that will probably mutate my kids someday. And even now, I went into work last Saturday. I'm the only one in the office on the Saturday, and I did it not because somebody told me to or because there was a desperate project that needed to be finished, but simply because there was a project that I wanted to finish, that I wanted to move forward, that I wanted to see progress on. And even today, I get up, I go to work, I work all day, I come home, I did a stupid guided meditation on Alexa for 15 minutes, and then I started working on what I'm saying right now.
Sorry.
And that's great, Alexa. And that's my past. And everyone has one. And our past helps to shape our lifestyle expectations and our identity. They're all bound together. We have an idea of how we should be living and why and how hard we have to work to deserve that, and how our life is going to be in 10 years and how our life is going to be in 20 years. And it's based on the people that we grow up around and what we grew up around. breaking from that past and breaking from those expectations is painful. Because it's painful to break from your identity. That pain makes it easy to ignore when reality tells us that it's different from what we believe. I didn't expect to work so much and to work so continuously and to outpace so many people and find myself now living in a one-bedroom condo, less than 1,000 square feet, driving a Honda Civic, and eating $4 pasta at night. That's not my expectation. That's incongruent with what I grew up seeing and what I grew up believing. There's a disconnect between my expectations growing up and my life right now. And the fact that there is a disconnect is a matter of choice at this point. In my 20s, I spent money pretty freely. I made good money. I was in engineering, and I would go and say, wow, there's a really nice French restaurant. And it's going to be like $300 for 2 people. And I like French food, and there's more than $300 in my bank account, so let's go to that French restaurant. And yeah, the restaurant was good. But near the end of my 20s, I realized I wasn't on a path to achieve what I wanted in the long run in my life. And that really bothered me, so I started looking at things and I started planning. And what I realized when I started looking around and planning is that my net worth numbers and my money numbers weren't going to hit the things that they needed to hit to achieve the big goals that I wanted to achieve by the time I died. And that bothered me so much that I was forced to change, to live differently. I don't spend $300 going to a French restaurant anymore. And I had to think differently about myself because I wasn't allowed to do those things anymore to hit my long-term goals. I had to think differently about the person I needed to be and the lifestyle that I deserved if I wanted to hit the goals that I knew I wanted. And that's painful, to realize that what you expect is not going to happen for you the way you thought it was. I don't get to have my big long-term goals and to, have a ping pong table in the back of a big house that's near to where I work. It's not the way the numbers are here. And even if we look at things that are happening today, me recording these YouTube videos, there's a disconnect. Because I think that these videos are all very valuable and I think they're worth listening to, but not everyone agrees with me. This is a pretty old video. It's only ever received 2 views, and I can't guarantee you that one of those wasn't me. And nobody gave a crap. Nobody disliked it, nobody liked it, nobody commented. This is feedback for me, just like it's feedback for me that I'm not going to hit my goals if I don't increase my savings rate from what it was in my 20s. This is feedback from YouTube saying I'm not going to hit my goals in terms of the number of people that I want to help unless I make changes about these videos. Because there's a disconnect between my expectations about how helpful I am and how helpful I actually am. So this YouTube number is telling me that I have to change a video thumbnail or a video title, or I have to change the subject that I'm talking about, or the way that I present the subjects, or the audience that I'm targeting. There's a lot of different ways that I might need to change, and I don't know which one is true, but if I keep making the videos every day, I keep getting slapped in the face from different angles, from different roughnesses of hand in different ways. And even though a lot of times I don't get the change on the first slap, by the time you've been slapped the same 10 ways for 10 different videos, you tend to change the way that you're doing things. It's a painful process. It doesn't get less painful just because you keep doing it. But at this point in my life, I've been through this stuff over and over again. Like, I've tried to do hard things. I've gotten slapped down for it. And I'm very familiar with the pain of failure. If you ever try doing yo-yo tricks, you're going to miss the trick about 1,000 times before you hit it. And if you take physics at an Ivy League university, it's not going to be surprising when you score below 50% on an exam. I know personally that I hate changing. I think there are other people who are better at it. I'm not very good at it. And my response to that has been that I overly expose myself to painful feedback. So that's one reason why I'm doing a video every single day this year, because I want the maximum amount of feedback I can possibly get from these videos to force myself to change in a productive direction. And unlike the text here, I am not floating through the process like Neo in the Matrix. I have my own list of changes that I'm procrastinating on, but I do recognize that change is necessary. I do recognize that there is a disconnect. And I do plan things specifically to move myself in better directions, whether it's the books I read or the people I talk to or these videos. I'm slower than I'd like, but I can see the shape of this whole process, and it plays out over and over again throughout life, and it goes something like this. You live and you've got expectations and identity according to how you've been living. Then you get some feedback from reality, and that feedback is going to come in the form of no one giving a crap about your YouTube videos, or the feedback is going to come in the form of a retirement plan from a financial planner that tells you need to save $1,000 a month, or that feedback is going to come from reality in the form of a divorce, whatever it is. And the feedback is not fun. The feedback is not pleasant. But the feedback is an important signal, and it's a signal that you need to change something. You need to reflect on what's going on, and you need to make some changes. I see this over and over again in the financial world. For example, if you look at one of the topics, money and families, over and over again, you will find parents who are subsidizing their adult children with money, or allowing their adult children to live with them for a long period of time. Those parents are protecting their adult children from the signal that they need to change. And this is why enablers are damaging. Because their kid has expectations and identity, but their parent is shielding them from this feedback from reality. And so the kid's not getting the signal that they need to change, and they're not developing from those changes and becoming more productive. And over time, that's going to be really problematic. Let's go back to the numbers. This is something I want you to remember, so I'm going to repeat it 3 times. Numbers do not care what you expect. Mathematics does not care what you expect. The numbers in your financial plan do not care what you expect. They don't care about your identity. They don't care about the way you've been living for the past 20 years. They don't care about the family that you came from. The numbers are what they are. That it costs $18.86 a day to visit Cambodia, or that $1 billion will not cure big world problems, these are facts. They're not going to change. The fact that you need over $1 million to retire in 30 years. You will need $1 million to retire after 30 years. These facts don't give a fuck, not a single fuck, about your lifestyle expectations, or your identity, or what you did in your childhood, or what you were told you would be able to have. Your goals will not magically come true. You need to plan for them. Money is going to be part of that plan. And when you do the planning, you'll find that the numbers you need to hit do not care about the lifestyle you enjoy right now. They don't care about any of it. They're just necessary numbers. They don't know about vacations that you imagined for yourself. They don't know about where your friends are when they take selfies. The math doesn't know or care about the way that you dress, how you think you look. All that the math cares about is if you hit the numbers you need to hit to satisfy the equations. What is your savings rate? What will the investment return? What will inflation be? What will things cost in the future? If you satisfy your lifestyle expectations and you continue living in a way that makes you feel like you, that's the identity that you imagined for yourself, but you don't satisfy the math, it's game over. Your plan will fail. And if you have a plan right now and you're not hitting your numbers, it's not a plan, it's a fantasy. Those goals are not going to become true. And all of this will be your fault because the math doesn't have a brain, it doesn't have free choice. You're the only one that has the free choice and the brain to think about what's going on and to change. The reason why expectations is the topic of video number 90 is because over and over again, when I talk to people, I find a disconnect in their expectations. Person makes good money and I ask, do you want to retire? And they want to retire. Do you want to own a home? Of course I want to own a home. And then we talk about the numbers that are necessary to hit those goals, and their eyes just kind of glaze over. And the reason why their eyes glaze over is because the numbers they need to hit to achieve those goals are incompatible with their current identity and their current lifestyle. They're living a fantasy, and they're not being honest with themselves about it. Are you living a fantasy that you're not being honest with yourself about? There's no delicate way for me to have this conversation with someone. You need to change your fucking expectations. Because the math isn't going to change. If you want to keep spending the same and satisfying those lifestyle expectations, and satisfy these new plan inputs that seem really high, you can't keep the same job. You're going to have to change your job. And as long as you have the old job, you can't keep spending the money on lifestyle and hit the plan inputs. The numbers don't work. People glaze over, and I get it. Because I've been there before. And the conclusion I've come to is that people don't realize, they really don't realize how mushy expectations and identity are. People think, I am who I am. I'm Lewis. This is what I believe. This is who I am. And people don't realize that you've already been many people in your lifetime, and you're going to be many more people in your lifetime. Your expectations can be changed. Your identity can be changed. You've done it before, and you'll do it again. The only question is whether you'll be forced to do it by going broke, or whether you're going to voluntarily choose that change now. The bad news is that this isn't a very pleasant process. Learning what you're not going to get out of your life in the short term is not very uplifting. Learning what you're going to have to give up in the short term is not very uplifting. But the good news is that the disappointment is temporary. And the pain from changing goes away, and it actually goes away sooner than you would imagine. When I thought about it for myself, it was about 3 months. After about 3 months, I didn't mind the changes anymore. Because once you give up the lifestyle, once you give up the spending, once you give up that identity, and you start filling in and hitting those plan numbers, and you see some progress from the plan, then those big long-term goals that you want to achieve, they go from black and white to color. And they become more real. Instead of some weird shimmering thing in the distance, it becomes something that will probably happen in 5 years, will probably happen in 2 years, could happen in 6 months. As you get closer, it only gets more real. After you make the progress and after you see the long-term goals becoming more realistic, you don't even want the old lifestyle back anymore. Because it's really exciting to see these much bigger goals come into focus. Also, as you practice a different lifestyle, you get habituated to that lifestyle. You get used to the lifestyle. And people like their habits. They like the things they don't have to think about anymore. That's another reason why the pain goes away, because as you gain the habits to spend money more efficiently, to find more joy in activities where you're spending less money, then it just gets easier. Your thoughts about money are going to change. You know, when I started this, $1 billion seemed ridiculous. But as I've read about people who've been very successful with money and what they want to do and how they see the world, $1 billion doesn't seem like that much money anymore. And as I've spent less money and I've seen what I can get from spending very little money, I've seen that $1,000 has a lot of potential. There are a lot of possibilities for it, and there's a lot of joy that you can get from a small amount of money. But none of this happens automatically. You have to realize what's going on. You have to realize that you have disconnects in your life between the math you're achieving and the forward momentum that you want. You have to accept the pain that comes with these disconnects. You have to change your spending. You have to change your attitude towards yourself, towards your life. It's going to take months to stop feeling emotionally bad about your new identity. And it's going to take months to develop new habits that are going to make it a lot easier to continue spending less money. And I wouldn't be saying any of this except that this was all a surprise to me. I didn't understand before I started saving a lot of money that it was going to become this easy emotionally after time. I didn't understand before I stopped spending the money that I was going to feel really good about my life by doing this. And it's taken me by surprise. So I'm coming from your future to try and tell you that things are going to be really awesome, but you're going to have to slog through some shit to get there. I want your life to be awesome. There are a lot of people in your life who don't want to rock your boat. They don't want to upset you. They don't get anything out of upsetting you. And they have their own financial issues. Most people do. I want to rock your boat because I know that whatever short-term disappointment that you have to work through is nothing compared to the joy you're going to get from achieving your big goals for the rest of your life. If you're not hitting your numbers and you're not making changes, be hard on yourself. Return that unnecessary thing that you bought. Sell that ridiculous car. Skip the vacation. Get some roommates. Everybody has excuses when I talk to them. It's either somebody who isn't making very much money and they wonder why can't they have this thing that just eases the pain. It's like, come on, man, I'm already poor. I'm already not making money. Lewis, why do you have to be such an asshole and tell me I need to sell this thing? Or it's somebody who makes a lot of money that I'm talking to, and they think that they are just going to save money later. But they're not going to save money later because you get in the habit of whatever you've been doing. So if you're not saving a lot of money, you're training yourself so that your brain is going to be very good at not saving very much money. Your brain is going to become very efficient at spending most of your income. And if you just float through life with this habit, you're going to wake up in 20 years and your investment runway is going to be gone. And it's going to be that much harder, exponentially harder, to even achieve retirement. The math does not care. You're either hitting your numbers or you're not. You're either hitting the savings rate that you need or you're not. And if you're not hitting that savings rate, you need to reset your expectations. You need to change. You can definitely change. That's it for 5-Year Club video number 90. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope if you're not hitting your savings rate, you will take a hard look in the mirror and ask yourself what needs to change, because the math's not going to change. Have a fabulous evening.